Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us here today. And I have to say how wonderful it is for all of us to be together after so long. As you can see, I specially arranged some English summer weather for you today. I talked to Pamela and she taught me a new phrase. It's called liquid sunshine. Or as Freeman would say, the sun always shines on UMBC. So we have a wonderful treat before us today as we're going to be joined in conversation with Chancellor Perman and President Hrabowski. So and you'll be glad to know this, I'm going to keep my remarks very brief today. Less than 2 weeks ago, we enjoyed a campus event that we called Retriever Empowered. That event celebrated some of the many collective achievements of our community, and some of those that have garnered the highest levels of national recognition. For example, in 2019, the Carnegie awarded us the classification as a Carnegie Engaged Campus, one of actually only 359 nationally to receive this recognition, which involved a very rigorous process. I know a number of you are involved in that. In 2020, UMBC was invited to join the University Innovation Alliance. That's just one of 11 member campuses and the only one in Maryland. In 2021, we received the APLU Gold Award for Leadership and Pervasiveness in Internationalization. We were, in fact, that year, the only North American university to receive that award. And last, but certainly not least, this past year, in 2022, we received the Carnegie R1 classification, one of only 146 campuses in the nation, and only one of 3 in Maryland. Each of those accomplishments and many more of those remarkable achievements, of course, have their roots in our strategic plan and in the determination, commitment, and innovation of every member of our community. And I want to emphasize today that all of those accomplishments that I've mentioned, and of course, many other achievements of this amazing community, belong to everyone that is here today. They would have been impossible without your vision, hard work, and commitment over so many years as you built this university into what it is today, laying the foundation and the future for everything we have achieved and will achieve together. And so for the difference you've made to our university and to our community, and for the difference you have made in the lives of so many people, thank you so much. So we're now about to serve lunch, but before doing so, I've been asked if I could remind you of something. Remind you to complete, if you can, a brief survey that is in the Wisdom Institute bag that you received when you picked up your name badge. Now, there is actually a pen in the bag, so there are no excuses. Names will be drawn from all of those who submitted a completed survey, and 8 lucky winners will receive a $25 gift card, so get those pens out. And the winners are going to be announced after the program. So with that, please enjoy lunch and the rest of the event. Thank you so much, everybody.
Hello to everyone. Hello. I am delighted also to welcome you. My name is Freeman Hrabowski, and I love working at UMBC. I'm delighted to be here. It's so great to see all of you. We all have stories. Everybody has a story and stories about the university, and those stories will live on. I'm delighted about the Wisdom Institute. I want to thank all of you who've been involved. Give Diane Lee a round of applause for what she does for everybody else. So this is going to be very informal, and our Chancellor is going to talk some, and then Diane will ask us questions, and I'll ask questions. Let me say 2 or 3 things about our Chancellor. Number one, he is one of the finest human beings I know. He cares deeply about children. Everyone's children. He has background from Northwestern in medicine. He has worked for a decade at Hopkins. He was a dean at University of Kentucky. He did a fellowship at Harvard. He was a chair at Maryland. It seems to be pediatric gastroenterology, right? And most important, he has been the president at UMB for a decade, and the president's made it clear to the regents we wanted him to be our chancellor. He has done a superb job. He is fair to all the campuses. I often say he knows how to distribute the wealth among us in a very special way. There's sometimes an emphasis towards one area or another, but he's very fair. And he wants us to keep building excellence in research and teaching, in working with the community. And so it is my pleasure to invite Chancellor J. Perman to the stand. He's wonderful. And Diane, you can come on up too, please, very much. Give them a round of applause. And the person who keeps him on task is Denise. Where's Denise? Denise Wilkins. Stand up, Denise. Let them know the Chief of Staff, for sure. Give her a round of applause, would you?
You know, when Freeman introduces a person, it's really hard to live up to what he says. Thank you, President Hrabowski, Provost Strauss, Dr. Lee, Wisdom Institute Board, colleagues. I know that this invitation was issued to me before Freeman announced his retirement. You really should be spending all of your time with Freeman, so I feel particularly privileged for letting me share your time with him. I was asked to talk about the future of higher education, the challenges and opportunities I see coming toward us. That's not easy to do in 15 minutes. And anyway, it's my dear friend here, it's the President, who's been, as you know, in higher ed leadership for 40 years. Not me to tell you about the future of higher ed. He'd, I'm sure, have a better answer than I do. But having said that, I have been in academic medicine for a very long time. As a professor, as a division head, a department chair, and dean, as you heard, all before being privileged to be the president at UMB for about a decade. And I thought it might be instructive to illuminate that path, my path, because it's that path that's influenced what my priorities are for higher ed into the future, and specifically for the University System of Maryland. You know, and I'll bet some of you are wondering, I'm often asked, how does a physician, a pediatrician, become chancellor of a university system? And maybe even more to the point, why? It's a good question. And it's born of what I saw in treating patients and serving their families, which I still do. Every week in my clinic, I see the things that contribute to poor health outcomes, the things that predict those outcomes, all of them largely beyond my patient's control. Poor housing, poor schools, unreliable transportation, no healthy food, close by, just corner stores. No safe place for outdoor play and social connection. I see deficient health literacy, which has damaging consequences. We say things to people and they don't understand. These all lead to poor outcomes. And I believe that the best way to remediate all of this isn't medicine so much as it is education. That if we could guarantee everyone access to an affordable, high-quality education, we could fix many of the problems that I mentioned, both on an individual basis and across populations. So in that way, I'm in the right job, because I really do believe that higher education is health care. And I'll be frank in sharing with you that there was another reason that education access for all has been top of mind for me for a long time. And that's because of my own story, how I got to medical school, and what that education has made possible for me. How I got the privilege to stand here before all of you. So I grew up in Chicago. I was the only child of immigrant parents who'd fled persecution in Eastern Europe. And, you know, I was well taken care of, but we were very poor. My parents operated a hand laundry. If the customers picked up their laundry and cleaning at the end of the week, we had a decent next week as a family. And my father passed away. He was a 2-pack-a-day smoker, and he developed esophageal cancer, which is one of the complications of smoking. He passed away when I was 14. My mother couldn't manage that hand laundry, so she became a seamstress in what used to be called in those days a sweatshop. You got paid, she made hats. You got paid by the hat, not by the hour. You had to hustle. But I wanted to go to medical school. And, you know, I was fortunate to be an undergrad at Northwestern, got through with loans and a bit of scholarship, and a job in the transportation library shelving books. But I wanted to go to medical school. And I was fortunate enough to be accepted to Northwestern's medical school, but my mother and I had no idea how we were going to pay for it. And one day, about 3 weeks before I was supposed to show up, I got this letter in the mail. It said something like this: "Dear Mr. Perman, you are the Ploner Scholar. Your medical education is paid for." Now, with a gift from a person who I never got to meet and never got to thank, as I said, I'm able to stand here before you today. And that has influenced greatly why I do this work, why we all do this work. I was just back at Northwestern last weekend with a group of classmates endowing a scholarship to carry on this legacy that I was the benefit of. You know, there's a lot of talent out there. I'm going to come back to that in a minute or two. There's just not enough in the way of opportunity. And so when I got to the chancellorship, I said that was my number one goal, to make sure that anyone who wants a college education can get one. Because there are a lot of people who want it and can't get it. And that's why this talk of the demographic cliff, which some of you have heard about, you know, frankly, it's there, but it doesn't impress me much. There are plenty of people to educate. And yet enrollment is shrinking. I know it. The number of traditional age students enrolling, this is the demographic cliff, will start dropping in 2025 and continue for at least a decade. That's what our future looks like writ large. That's attributable, as you know, to a declining birth rate following the 2008 recession. And of course, it's been made worse by the pandemic. Of course, the pandemic had another effect, even more damaging. It depressed college-going plans. It spiked dropouts, not just at four-year schools like ours, but especially at community colleges, which have suffered double-digit enrollment drops the last 1 or 2 years. So we're innovating how we serve this increasing pool of what we've called non-traditional students, the folks who have to work, the folks who have a family, often 25 and older. And we do have to do that. And UMBC could tell me and you more about serving non-traditional students than I could tell you. They've introduced novel programs to address that. It's an essential part of our broad USM strategy. And then institutions are focusing on competition among each other, enlarging their own piece of the student pie by attracting applicants away from other potential schools. But here we are, worried about what might be a 15% drop in college-age kids, when we've never enrolled even close to the number who are out there. We're not enrolling nationally all of the 3.9 million students who graduated high school last year in this country, not to mention the million more that didn't. We act as though the pie of potential enrollees to higher ed is fixed, that our slice will grow only if someone else's shrinks. And that's not true. We can bake a bigger pie, much bigger. The pool of students we focus on, we collectively, is not a fixed quantity. We must expand it. A couple years ago, we celebrated a significant climb in college enrollment among low-income students, which the pandemic punctured, by the way. But you know what we celebrated? We celebrated a rise in those students from 12 to 20% of the eligibles. But we can do better than that. We're morally obligated to do better than that. Now, I'm not saying everybody should go to college. I know about that debate, you do too. But I am saying that we should do more to help those who could, who might. And that takes a lot of long-term work. It takes bigger, closer, deeper relationships. And I had the pleasure of knowing what UMBC does this morning, relationships with elementary, middle, and high schools so that our pipeline of learners doesn't hemorrhage by the time they get to grade 12. It takes investment in our teacher education programs, as you're doing here, so we know our teachers are preparing students for college-level work. I'm hosting a reception next month with Maryland Education Secretary Mohammed Chowdhury and teachers, teacher educators, so that we can begin tightening the relationships between us in higher ed and those folks in the pre-K to 12 space, so that we can tighten our relationship, get to the hard work of aligning expectations, treating education as a true continuum rather than a fiefdom. Enrolling more students, frankly more disadvantaged students, takes enrichment programs, as you're doing here, as you're offering, mentoring programs, bridge programs to help those who are most vulnerable and who are most often overlooked and left behind. That is critical. When I leave here today, I'm going to a graduation ceremony for 20 UMB Cure Scholars, all from West Baltimore. When I first met them, they were 11 years old, little sixth graders. That's when they committed to an intensive long-term STEM monitoring program at UMB, assisted materially by students from UMBC who mentored them. They spend hours and hours on campus each week, after school, over the summer. And they're graduating tonight. Half of them are going to four-year colleges this fall, the other half to a community college, or in some cases, a trade school. You know, I may be biased, but I consider that a 100% success rate in their potential for a better, healthier life. Another thing about enrollment, it's not just attracting students to your school, it's doing everything in your power to keep them. We have to make sure that the students who are currently in college have the academic advising, academic support services they need to stay in school. The retention issues seem to catch fire across the country once that mythical pool of college goers began to shrink. Everybody got worried. And, you know, before that, if you could just enroll enough, you could keep up with it. But again, that's not right. It's not ethical, especially since many college goers who drop out actually fare worse long term than those who never went at all, because they don't have a degree. You know what they have? They have debt. And all of these long-term intensive efforts to retain, they're difficult, they're expensive, and every single one is essential. But let me suggest three more things we can do right now in closing. We can help students and families fill out the FAFSA. You've got this population of students who, in many cases, are already vulnerable, already marginalized, and now you put this complex, cumbersome form in front of them, asking all sorts of personal questions that people think rightly are invasive, makes it harder, requires all sorts of documentation. No wonder FAFSA rates are falling, down to nationally just 54% of high school seniors last fall. In 2016, it was 61%. Wrong direction. Every student, certainly every student in poverty, every first-generation student should have the opportunity to get help filling it out. We can advocate that Maryland make FAFSA filling mandatory for high school graduation. A number of states have it. You know, when people don't apply, billions of dollars are left on the table. That should be going into the pocket of learners so that we can make meaning out of access. So that's one thing. Obviously, financial aid is essential. System-wide, at the USM, institutional aid we offer students is at an all-time high. And just this past year, we asked the governor for additional funds in our operating budget, expressly for student financial aid. We got an additional $20 million, absolutely terrific, to be divided up among our universities.
Big round of applause for that.
But you know, there are stopgaps that we can put into place too. We can make micro scholarships available to help students drop out, who might drop out because they can't make their rent that month or they can't afford prescriptions. They have to make a choice. I'm telling you, it's appallingly common how often students stop out of their education, especially now that the pandemic may have taken jobs. just because they can't afford their bills. And we can do something about that with relatively small investment. We have to get the money for it, but the proposition is much more cost-effective than the cost of losing a student out of our colleges. I saw a question from someone in this room asking about food pantries at our universities, whether our schools have them and promote them. The answer is they do. Food insecurity is a huge issue in higher ed. Pandemic has made it worse. Donations to university food pantries, emergency funds have spiked since COVID. The USM Foundation gave $150,000 to these emergency funds during the bleakest months of the pandemic. So that's the concept of micro scholarships. Why lose a student if $200 or $400 will keep them here? So that they don't need to choose between college and car insurance. And finally, another thing that we can do right now that we've started doing is fixing the transfer pipeline from our community colleges into our university system. Working with the legislature, we've just unveiled a new platform for 35 post-secondary institutions in Maryland. Not just us, we did it for everybody, including all 16 community colleges, that gives transferring students a much better understanding of which credits transfer where, puts them in control of their own education, saves them credits, time, money, frustration. It's called the Transfer with Success Act that was just passed this session. It supports the work of a common platform, requires that participating four-year schools honor community college credits approved for transfer. We should do that. Every credit that's not approved is time wasted, money wasted, delays graduation, and in a lot of cases, a degree delayed is a degree deferred. Students just quit. That's not okay. And I know there's controversy about this. We don't want to dilute our high standards, but I don't think it's inevitable to dilute your standards while at the same time facilitating transfer so that students can transfer without remediation, which again is often the first step on the dropout path. So that's the kind of cliff that I'm worried about. Things that we can fix rather than worrying about what the birth rate was in 2008. It's not demography that's costing us students. Enrollment drops, which are probably the greatest challenge for the future of higher ed, they're not inevitable. We've just got to get smarter and better at practicing what we preach: an accessible, equitable education for all. Thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
For
Thank
caring.
you so much, Dr. Perman. I have to admit that I never thought of access to high-quality education as medicine, not to mention as sweet medicine, but I absolutely love the concept.
Well, thank you. It doesn't taste bad.
It doesn't taste bad.
Goes
That's
down well.
medicine I could take. And as a matter of fact, as I listened, I thought as you bake that pie and you make it broader and broader, I hope you'll include retirees in that pie as well. Because I think we are the epitome and the tangible evidence of lifelong learning. Yeah. So we too could join you at the table and in the pie, so to speak.
Look forward to it.
Give Diane a hand for always lobbying.
You will recall when you registered to come today, we asked if you had some questions that you would like us to pose for Drs. Perman and Hrabowski. So I have some of your questions, and I'm going to be putting them out there for both of you to respond to. Dr. Perman, you touched on it a little bit, but we would I think, like to hear a little bit more. Looking ahead, what do you see as the greatest challenges for higher education? And a secondary question, do you think we'll ever have universities claiming Chapter 11?
Well, those are, of course, important questions. What do I see ahead as the greatest challenge? I think we are, well, I hope, on our way to recognizing that we can't be what higher ed, I think, used to be, at least as it relates to those who are potentially our future students. You know, I've always seen, and some of you may object to this, I've always looked at higher ed as something like a centerpiece on the table. And we've got a few centerpieces. You know, we sit here, maybe this is harsh, but let's face it, we sit here in higher ed and we have requirements, we should have requirements, we almost dictate them to those coming ahead to us, and then if they meet those requirements, if pre-K to 12 has done its job, then maybe we're gracious enough to say, okay, you can come. We have to change that paradigm. We have to do our part to make sure that the children who we hope will be our students, who need to be educated, have somehow benefited from our expertise, from a lot of the things that UMBC does, whether it's at Lakeland Elementary School, or Cherry Hill, or the city schools in general, or the schools in Montgomery County. Let's give a hand. Let's help. And then we'll be better off. We will fulfill our mission. Chapter 11, mergers. Some of you may recall that I had some expertise in merger discussions about 10, 12 years ago. As proponents of a merger between College Park and UMB, developed some steam. And we came to a more elegant solution, but that's another story. The plain fact of the matter is that forget about higher ed. Most business mergers, you know what happens to them? They don't work. And there's increasing evidence that they don't work well in higher ed. We each have our cultures. What we need to figure out is how to take institutions, they can't be equally failing, but how to take strong institutions, institutions steeped in culture, and get them working together, finding effective strategies to share things. And then I think people can stand on their own and be a little leaner and succeed and survive.
Thank you.
Two things. Number one, and I want to echo what Jay said about the larger human condition questions, the challenges we face. And one clearly involves preparation of our children of all backgrounds from the city and other places, and the fact that a large percentage of students in our country, in this area, in our state, cannot read well. It's hard to talk about somebody's future if they don't read at least the 9th grade level. And yet, in the past couple of years of COVID, have taken scores down. And it's not just about the scores, it's about the skills that children have not gotten. If a kid is from an educated home, somehow families have struggled, but they've had somebody working with that child while they're on that screen. But if they're not there, the child just has not done well, and we see that in so many ways. So that is a part of the issue. The other one that Jay I know will agree with me on is that as research campuses, whether it's UMB, College Park, UMBC, we have a responsibility, and not just in science and engineering, to help with major policy questions in our country. And that's where I'm going with this. Some of my colleagues here are from the policy areas. So few Americans understand how policies have changed. Even after the Obama period, people thought, well, nothing happened, nothing changed, and not realizing what it meant for healthcare for so many people, as an example. And I would suggest that we have a major role to play, particularly in this Baltimore-Washington corridor, in continuing to prepare undergrad and grad students and to have faculty working on critical policy issues, not just about healthcare, that's one area, but about the achievement gap, about economic disparities, about criminal justice, those kinds of issues. It is significant that we have a stronger relationship with UMB than we've ever had. Jay, they had a lot to do with that, and he brought Bruce along, and we all worked really well together, and we'll keep doing that. We do work with College Park, too, and I'm proud of that. I'm very pleased with the president of College Park. He's very impressive, and our system is stronger than ever. I would say this whether Jay is here or not. The fact is, because of COVID, and having an expert in healthcare at the head who also cared about our campuses, we did work more effectively together. And that's a piece of it. The other piece I wanted to mention, and I know it's another one of the questions on there, Diane, involves the future of UMBC as we are now research. Well, we've only become Research One for two main reasons. Number one, we'd already had quite a bit of research in science and engineering, and we had excellent faculty in humanities and social sciences. We needed to invest more money in those areas, art, humanities, social sciences, because Carnegie looks at the comprehensive nature of the work. And we have invested substantially over the past decade in those areas, from creative efforts to humanities to social sciences. And it shows up in the grants, in the books, and all those kinds of things. There was always some of that, but it's much more across the board now, leading to the research status. But we can only be comfortable with the research status knowing that we do a good job with undergrads. It's not going to mean any more. Somebody asked the question about tenure track versus tenure and whatever. No, none of that will change. We're doing better in that area than ever before. When I first became president and came in as vice provost, graduation rates were not quite 40%. Most people didn't know that, not quite. And it was just known, UMBC was so good and so hard, most people didn't make it. And the one thing I heard from people of all races a lot was, yeah, I went to UMBC. That was their way of saying they didn't graduate from UMBC. It was not a pretty picture of all the races. I mean, and it's something a lot of campuses had to work on. Now we're up to 70% graduation rate, with another 15% who transfer because of programs we don't have. So we can account for 85%, and that will continue. It's very important to say that. Final point, more than people realize, we are working to help students prepare for this divided world where truth doesn't seem to matter. More and more proactively, the provost is here and can appreciate this, we're working in classrooms and beyond to help people understand what does it mean to look at the evidence and to make decisions based on the truth, and what does it mean to learn to hear an opinion different from your own. More than that, I work with new presidents at Harvard, and I'm often saying we criticize Congress, but they all came through our campuses. We talk about the value of the liberal arts, but they all came through our campuses. Yeah. And yet somehow they seem to have come in and not have been changed. And that's where, for me, the biggest part of higher education, how do we make sure we're having an impact on people so they don't simply see the point of view they came in with as the last point of view, as the finals? How do we change those minds and hearts?
Oh my gosh, I have a moral dilemma. Do I stay with the questions that were posed or start asking the questions that have come to mind? Very, very hard. But the question of what ought to be taught is very, very real. And I think as we look forward, when you open the doors to universities, when you create the pipelines, asking what ought to be taught at each stage and by whom, I think becomes almost a moral, well, it is to me a moral imperative. We have to ask those questions and ask them deeply, and we have to ponder the answers. The notion of interrogating data and teaching folks how to interrogate data, including those you hold deeply in your own heart, as well as beliefs. How do we determine which is which and then move forward with decisions? How do you weigh data with opinion, with passion, with belief, with faith? Sure. These are complicated questions. What ought to be taught and by whom? Which leads me to a question that was posed. Do you think that the modes of teaching and learning in higher education will change based on what we have experienced, primarily due to the pandemic? And if so, in what ways?
Well, I'll start with a short answer. Not only will they change, they have. And you've all heard this term. Certainly the pandemic has been an accelerant. We've had to adapt in ways that we could never have conceived, I think. And I think our faculty and staff and our students have been marvelous in adapting. In my own case, and this is not necessarily part of teaching, I mentioned in passing that once a week I have the privilege of seeing patients, and when I see patients, I have students from many of our professional schools and a number of our campuses, people that are thinking about a healthcare career with me. Of course, that was all in person. And within healthcare, sort of the equivalent of remote learning, telemedicine, that was an interesting idea that was hardly used. It's the only way I see patients now, and I'm enthralled with it. So we can adapt, we can change. I do worry, and it'll be interesting to hear Freeman's perspective on this. I do worry about losing something in the interaction, in the in-person interaction, if we go too far in the remote interaction. You know, as Freeman alluded to already, we're all having enough trouble getting along with each other these days. And if it's only through a screen, it's going to, in my opinion, get worse.
You know, for UMBC, I have no doubt that we will continue to be heavily in person. Heavily in person. Faculty are finding ways of using the technology, and it is a different world, though. I mean, a faculty member might meet with the class 3 times a week and decide 2 of those are in person, and 1 of those times will be using the technology, for example. Or I can think of occasions where students will say that we have these dates when we're going to do things online, and then we're in person. The in-person part would be the most important part for UMBC. For some other places, it's different. I've done accreditation work out with the Western Governors Group. Many of those populations in those states do everything online. Always have for years, because there's no place close to them, and they do it. But that's not our situation. We are, and there are campuses, University of Maryland Global Campus does that. But that's, as one faculty member here said, that's not what we signed up for. Yeah. We want the in-person. The in-person makes a difference. So we'll have a hybrid, but it will be heavily in person. I'm sure of that, yeah.
And I think it takes us back to your point, one of your points, Dr. Perman, and that is that financial aid is going to be really important, and maybe we need to think of it in the early years as well as we create the pipeline, because people are going to have access to technology, and they're going to have access to folks who can help them with technology so that they can master what it is they have to know, the tools, if you will, in order to proceed.
Yes.
So it seems to me that these things are beginning to, form a web of need and a web of possibilities.
By the way, the online piece will have different meanings for different disciplines. I was really surprised to see, for example, in information systems, certain courses where students and faculty both thought there could be more online. And sometimes because a lot of the students were already working at a place. And so the flexibility issue is one. And we have to be respectful of people who are experts in a discipline and thinking about what they do and how they do it. It's
Exactly.
important.
Exactly. And I really appreciate your point, because I think the pedagogy is going to be important, but it should fit what it is you're teaching, as well as the persons with whom you're working. So it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
And
if you've not looked at the Pivot program, it's hundreds of our faculty went through a lot of education, professional development, and ways of using technology, not just about online, but using technology in the work to make teaching and learning more effective. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's exciting. When we think about coming back, it'll be a new world.
And I want to say this, and I've said this around the country. Everybody says, oh, with the good old days, we want to get back to the, well, for most of the country, public and private universities, my TED Talk says, and it's true, the data will tell me, 2/3 of Americans who start with majors in science and engineering in person don't make it. 2/3. And they're called by NSF, weed out courses, and that includes a lot of students who had perfect math scores. So there is more to be done, more improvement needed than we realize. So it's not just about the good old days, because for a lot of Americans, it wasn't the good old days.
No, the good old days when I first entered college were separate the wheat from the chaff. That was exactly what was to happen. And now at UMBC, what do we say? Not only access and open the doors, but let's focus on student success.
Yes,
exactly what you said, Dr. Perman, getting people to the finish line.
Yeah.
Making sure that persons reach the goals that they set for themselves. Really, really important. Freeman, you touched on this a little bit, but I think it's worth asking. What do you think is going to be the place of the humanities as we move forward, and how will you make a case for the humanities?
Well, you know, I start from the period when many of you worked with us in the administration to get the legislature to understand we needed that facility. That was 140, 50 million, whatever the number. And it was about educating legislators about the important role of the humanities for all of our students. I think now more than ever, everybody in this room knows ethical considerations will be more critical than ever, but I think humanities, social sciences, we need a sense of history. We do. We've been divided before, and we have to continue to remember that we are not distinct from the larger community. We reflect it in so many ways. Our students come, and they come from all kinds of political backgrounds with all kinds of biases, as we have, and it will be that self-reflection and looking in the mirror through the humanities and social sciences that we can begin to seek the truth and common ground somehow. It'll be more important than ever. Yeah.
Let me comment from a different perspective. Like Freeman, I have a chance to engage frequently with the leaders of business and industry, the people who provide the positions, the jobs for the graduates we educate. And so at commerce-type meetings, I often ask of them, are we doing what you want us to do in higher ed? And here's the message I get, synthesized from many individual messages. Perman, yes, send us people well prepared to do the job. Make sure they have the skill set. But you better also send us people who can communicate, who can write, who can speak, who can talk about things other than the work at hand. Those are the kind of employees we need. So the message is clear. The old-fashioned concept of a well-rounded higher education is still valued in the workplace.
Music to my ears. No pun intended.
Give you an example.
That's what the customer wants.
Of the future. Last night I was in Philadelphia. One of our graduates was getting this very prestigious Franklin Medal to be a Franklin laureate, a member of this Benjamin Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, part of University of Pennsylvania, and Kafri Zarasa, who has invented a pacemaker for the brain to address schizophrenia and bipolar disease. And he tells me that in a few years, not too long, we will be able to communicate with each other and not use our mouths. That we'll have sensors,
Oh my gosh.
And I'll be able to look at you, Rebecca, and know exactly how you're saying you're so bored right now. I'm kidding. But that's a scary thought. Pat Lanou, that's a scary thought that I'm looking into your head right now. I'm right, you know. But the reason I bring it up, because it sounds, but think about it, when I was in college, when they said we'd have phones in our pockets, who believed that? 25, 30 years. How many of you did not have a cell phone in college? It's a different world, right? So, I mean, you have to believe these things are going to happen. Why am I saying that? The more advanced the technology becomes, my God, the more important the humanities will be as we think about what it means as we connect, not just to communicate, but in who we are as human beings, as artificial intelligence. It's more important than ever, yeah.
Whew. If you could read my mind, I was sitting here thinking, what does it mean to be fully human in that kind of a situation?
Sure.
Wow, brings me to my knees.
Yeah.
I got the message that we have time for one more question, so I'm going to put it out there. But if you think about the greatest opportunity that we have in higher education for the future, what might it be?
Wow. Well, you know, I have a one-track mind, and I spilled it out over there. I want to make sure that what we achieve is fulfilling that promise. You want a higher education? We want you, and we're going to find a way to make sure you can access it and you can finish. Simple as that.
I think that's such an important message as we work to help more students who are challenged in their everyday lives. That college is not just for the privileged. I often say around the country, the message of UMBC is you don't have to be rich to be the best at what you do, as a faculty member, as a student. My broader challenge to all of us is we are the most privileged, those who've retired, those who are in universities, the most privileged in humankind. And I think our broad challenge is to improve the human condition, And that's done through helping more students become educated, yes. It's done through the kind of research and service we give as we think about these gaps between the haves and the have-nots, and as we think about the future of our democracy. My friend Ron Daniels has a new book on this role of universities in helping with the future of democracy. Everybody's talking about how fragile it is and which direction are we going. And it's very frightening. And I think we as college presidents and others have this responsibility to speak up for things, some things that people may like, some things that may not, but to say what we see as the truth about some of these issues. And it's sensitive because some would say, well, you shouldn't say anything, but there are rights being taken from people, whether it's about women or about people of color or about poor people in voting or abortion issues. I mean, these are issues, and there will be people on both sides, but I think we have the responsibility to be as balanced as possible, but as courageous as necessary to say what we think is real and right, and to disagree about it. I want to say this, we have the responsibility to learn how to agree to disagree with civility as a society, as universities. Because if you got thinking people, they will have different points of view. That's our challenge.
What a note to finish on. Can we say thank you to Drs. Perman and Radowski?
Thank you.
Amazing.
Just one comment, thank you. One comment, you're gonna love Valerie Ashby. She is an amazing and authentic human being who just happens to be brilliant. But more important than that, she comes from humble background in the sense that it's a small town, and most important, as she would put it, her dad was a science teacher and a minister, her mother a Shakespeare scholar, a teacher, so she's a chemist who can quote Shakespeare very comfortably.
Yeah.
And she said her dad taught her two things, one, how to tell a story, and number two, how to take up the offering. Which makes her well prepared to be a president.
Can't beat it.
You will love her, though. You really will love her.
Let's say thank you again, please.
Thank you.
Well, we can go now.
Yeah. Thanks. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Diane. Stay up there.
We're going to have dessert now, so
Okay.
dessert should be served, and we hope you enjoy it. Oh, Dr. Perman, Dr. Rabowski,
They want us to
I'm
stay up
sorry
here.
I let you go too soon.
Oh,
I let you go too soon.
oh, wow. Karen, you got something for us?
Please, come on up.
Go ahead, Mr. President.
I know how much Karen loves talking in front of people.
Dr. Perman and Dr. Rabowski, thank you for accepting the invitation from the Wisdom Institute in honor of our 5th anniversary
Yes.
annual signature event.
Yes.
On behalf of the Wisdom Institute and the Board of Directors, I'm pleased to present you with a gift from UMBC.
Wow.
Oh,
Thank you.
This is a special UMBC picture frame
Oh,
for each of you. And there was a photo was taken earlier today with the two of you.
Oh.
We will send that photo to you,
Okay.
and that will be the
Put in the frame.
completion of our gift.
I love it. Love
thank
it.
you so much.
And we appreciate your being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank
Round of
you.
applause.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
This is an induction ceremony. Freeman has often introduced me in the olden days as the oldest living employee of UMBC. And it's getting dangerously close to being the truth. Dear Mr. President, we knew this time would come. We always feared some other university would eventually steal you away. We should have known better. Your commitment to UMBC from day one was stronger than the prestige of the Ivy League schools or the sizable perks offered by larger universities with enormous budgets. And so, for over 30 years, we have worked together to make this improbable excellence inevitable. You came to UMBC with a dream. You probably believed in us more than we believed in ourselves. The first day I met you, as I slipped into the passenger seat of your car for a trip to a community college to talk to a group of administrators, you began to tell me about your plans for increased enrollment and improving retention. I was amazed at how much you already knew about UMBC and how quickly you had analyzed the problems and devised some solutions. I soon found out that this was only the beginning. The first years were spent establishing relationships, getting to know us and we getting to know you. You went to faculty departments, meetings, you met with student groups, you met with staff, you got to know us and we got to know you. Off campus, you went to high schools and community colleges. I remember once when we were in the office of a high school principal, he could not believe that the president of UMBC was sitting in his office. University presidents didn't do that, but Freeman Rabowski did. Your oratorical skills are legendary. Audiences around the country have listened spellbound when you related some of your experiences in the segregated schools of the South and your participation in the dawning of the civil rights movement. Then you would hit them with a poem, recited from memory, which highlighted all of your previous points. Finally, you seemed to always tie it back to UMBC and how fortunate you were to be president of a place that cared so much about students and does so well in preparing them for successful careers and full lives. But you are the catalyst that sets the example that truly makes us care deeply about our students and employees. Students, faculty, or staff, fortunate or unfortunate enough to join you on the elevator to the 10th floor, are subjected to a pop quiz on how they are doing and what they are doing. Sometimes this talk continues as you corral the unsuspecting individual into your office to finish the conversation. University presidents don't do that. but Freeman Hrabowski does. Experts in the field of leadership agree that the primary determinant of a successful leader is mutual trust. You are always careful to tell the campus the truth. You didn't overpromise, and when you did promise, you delivered. When times were tough and budgets were tight, you communicated to the bad news in a straightforward way to every campus constituency. And you were as proud of us, of our achievements, as you were of your own. Give yourself a hand, or give us a hand. Intersperse so many of your communications. Part of your genius was being able to tell others of all of our achievements without it sounding like boasting. Grit and greatness became our motto, and it truly does define our institution. You also brought to the campus a dream of your own, a program that would bring underrepresented minorities to the STEM disciplines and provide them with the tools and the support that would enable them to become successful in these fields. You had the good fortune to be introduced to Robert and Jane Meyerhoff, who were also looking to invest in a similar dream. From that first meeting, the Meyerhoff Scholarship Program was born. And when the Meyerhoff seed money became available, as always, you were ready. You had a strategic plan with a theoretical base and a research program already written. The research was designed from the get-go to determine if the program was achieving its goals and to prove to the academic world that this program was actually working. Soon students were turning down scholarship opportunities from the most prestigious universities in the country to come to UMBC, and they were successful. Your carefully planned research demonstrated that the Meyerhoff model made a positive difference. Your dream became a reality, and UMBC gained national recognition for its diversity and for sending its Meyerhoff graduates on to successful STEM careers. Then you used the model to spin off similar programs in the arts and humanities, the social sciences, and education. Being able to prove that the programs really worked attracted other funding sources. UMBC's reputation with well-prepared undergraduates led to expanded graduate programs and increased research funding. Enrollments and retention in both undergraduate and graduate schools grew, and graduation rates improved. You found creative ways to celebrate the life of the mind. With your encouragement and support, the UMBC chess team became a many-time national champion. Another college president once told me that Freeman got more favorable publicity with $500 that he spent on his chess team than he got with $500,000 on his football team. You have checked every box in the measures used to determine the success of a college president. Since you became our president, UMBC has seen its enrollment increase dramatically. State funding has increased through your ongoing work with governors and legislators. The physical plan has grown to include special facilities for the arts and event center has also been built. And I won't forget this, the UMBC basketball team shocked the athletic world when it became the first number 16 seed to knock off a number 1 seed in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. The collegiate basketball world went crazy, and UMBC notched its place in the history of collegiate basketball. But the thing that has made you so special to the people who have worked at UMBC is your humanity. You always took the time to interact on a very personal level with the university's many constituencies. You listened to us, you engaged with us, and you made every individual feel that they were an important part of the university's success. College presidents don't do that, but Freeman Hrabowski did. Speaking at your inauguration, Dr. Catherine Guerra, the late president of Frostburg University, likened your boundless energy to the Energizer Bunny, saying your innate drive made it possible for you to do all the things that college presidents are required to do, while at the same time bringing your personal touch to everything you did. In your inaugural address, you told us what kind of president you were going to be. And I quote, "To all of you, I proclaim it an honor and a privilege to lead the University of Maryland of Baltimore County. We are a university on the move. We know who we are, where we want to be, what we want to become, and how to get there. We will work to become the best public research university in the world, and we are determined that our dreams will not be deferred." Your words remain as breathtaking now as they were then, and you accomplished your pledge when UMBC was designated a Tier 1 research university earlier this year. The community of retired faculty and staff, the Wisdom Institute, is happy to have you join our ranks. Due in no small part to the leadership you have provided, we are extremely proud of the institution to which we have devoted our careers. You are our friend, our colleague, a scholar, and a leader, and you have raised the bar by which university presidents will be measured going forward. We are both proud and privileged to welcome you into the Wisdom Institute.
I'll give you a hug, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me just say, first of all, Todd did a really great job. Did he? Give Todd a round of applause, right? Jay laughed at me because it took me a minute to realize he was talking to me when he said, "Mr. President," right? He said, "Of course he's talking to you." Let me say this, and you've seen it written in different places. It is not about me. It is about us. Anything that has been done here has been done because of the work people did in the first 20-some years before some of us got here, laying that foundation. I just think about the spirit of Dick Neville as an example. But I also appreciate the fact that some of us are the Deep South, and John Jeffries is here somewhere. Well, Eastern Shore is South, but it's Deep South. Wait a minute, John. When we talk, you'll appreciate this, that UMBC took a chance on me. When George Lanew took me to the restaurant when I first got here, and he said, "We're with you. You'll be okay." And so many of you said it in different ways. And when I think about Art Johnson as the provost, who came to see me as the head of the faculty group, Art is here somewhere, to say, "We want you to be our president." You know, and I'll never forget that. And it is hard to believe I have been so blessed to spend 35 years on this campus, 30 as president. And when some of you saw my mother stand, she was just not believing this was possible. She did not know that a world like UMBC existed, where you could have people from everywhere, and the wonderful faculty and staff. Karen, who I know just loves getting up to speak in front of people. I love, and she and I can cry together in a heartbeat. Wait a minute. And Kathy and Susan, but all of the staff and faculty here, Betty Glasgow, who said, "You're gonna be okay, you're gonna be okay," and had known Jackie. But there's all of you here and people with world-renowned reputations, Rebecca and others who've spent time in other countries, and Pat Lanou, who always was and the campus is greener than ever. Greener than ever, and I give her credit for speaking about that in so many ways, and all from, and I see disciplines from history to social work to policy to staff around. Here's the message: we are better as a community because of each of us and what we do. And I challenge you just to be as wonderful to the new president as you have been to me. She is so much more impressive. You will see it in so many ways. I feel so privileged that she is joining us, but I'm especially happy for her because I know of no other institution with such a wonderful set of people, from the head of the Wisdom Institute, Diane, to every person in this room, to the faculty, the staff, the students, and our alumni. We are a special community. I would even say we are magical. When we get together, you feel that sense. And so I want you to give yourselves a round of applause. God bless you all. Thank you very much. That was a hell of a statement. It really was, right? That was impressive. Wait a minute.
I call it a four-hanky speech. Okay. If you're wondering whether or not we gave Freeman a copy of the agenda with the time that everything was going to occur, the answer is yes.
I just didn't look at it.
So we're shifting gears a little bit. But Freeman, I'm really honored to be able to give you a gift on behalf of everybody here, and even those who were unable to come, but retirees from UMBC, faculty and staff. It's here, and from the weight of it and the look of it, you know it's a book. So this is a book, and I want to share the inscription in that book with you and with everyone here. It's not about me, it's about us. This is how you and your co-authors, Dr. Rouse and Henderson, preface your book, The Empowered University. Yes. This theme captures the communal spirit and joint efforts that have led UMBC to become one of 146 top-ranked research universities in the United States of America. Ours is a compelling and an inspirational story. Indeed, it is a story characterized by humble beginnings, fueled by what many have characterized improbable aspirations, and driven by a firm conviction in one of your favorite mantras, success is never final. In many ways, we are much like our basketball team that Todd just talked about, that unseeded the #1 seed in the NCAA tournament. We, collectively, are a Cinderella team. We see ourselves in your chapters and celebrate the collective energy, shared leadership, and collaborative achievements that have made UMBC what it is today. And I've been waiting to say this. This book, however, Freeman, is not about us. This book is about you. This book is about you. Herein lies our reflections, memories, stories, discoveries, and importantly, our sense of your presence in our lives. Granted, we stand at the intersection of our personal stories and that of the university, but that's because place and context are relevant. It was fun to look back at these pages and read the brief pieces that were submitted. Some messages made us laugh, and some, like Tots that he just shared, led to watery eyes. Yes. Most often, we found ourselves, just as you were now, Freeman, nodding our heads in agreement. Wow. That's Freeman. Yes, that's it. They've captured him in a word, in a photograph. That's Freeman. And we indeed tried to capture your legacy in words and photographs. And as you move forward, dear friend, please know that we will still be with you.
Thank you.
Our love, respect, friendship, and prayers will always surround you and go with you. Continue to heed the call of your soul, and as you would say, hold fast to dreams. Freeman, we look back with recognition and appreciation, and we hope this book will bring you joy.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Very much. It's excellent. It's excellent. Just one comment. The unsung hero often that I never say enough about is Philip Rouse. I know he'll be surprised. He is such a lovely colleague and friend who's given his career to this university, and the new president is fortunate to have him. And he also worked to nurture somebody who grew up academic at UMBC, and I see her in the room, the new dean of arts, humanities, and social. I want Kimberly and Philip to please stand and give them both a round of applause. Philip, very nice, very proud. She grew up here, and he helped her to do so. Thank you, thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you.
We're going to have dessert now, and then there'll be a few closing remarks at the very end, and then the tour and the drawing for the gifts. Thank you very much, and enjoy dessert. Doctors Perman and Rabowski have a long agenda ahead of them this afternoon, so we're going to go ahead and close out the program. And I can't help it. I know that they have to leave, but I'm going to start by saying good afternoon. And Freeman's here, so you know what you have to do. So drop your forks, get ready. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Freeman would say, and let's try that again. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'll skip the remarks I had thanking you and so on and so forth, but what I really want to do is thank the Wisdom Institute Board, the people who have worked so hard, so very, very hard to plan and deliver events such as this one today. And it's hard to believe, but they kept us going despite the challenges presented during the last 2 years. And I want to ask the board members, would you please stand and let everyone see who you are and what you've been doing? As you look around, you know they worked really, really hard when they were full-time employees. I have to tell you, they're still among the most hardest working and dedicated people I know. And I'd like to say personally, I appreciate all that you do and the wonderful, wonderful spirit that guides your efforts. As you know, one of the ways the Wisdom Institute has chosen to continue supporting students is by supporting Retriever Essentials. Thank you to everyone who brought things today so that we can help our students. And we chose not to have flowers on the tables, but to have those cute little UMBC stuffed dogs. And that's because they too will be donated to Retriever Essentials. So thank you. So thank you for coming today. Enjoy your dessert. Freeman, Jay, thank you. They're taking a picture with the True Grit, the little baby grit.
Can you all give Diane another round of applause?
Thank you. As they say, it takes a village, and this is really a fabulous, fabulous village. We're going to finish dessert. Then Linda Baker will draw names of those who won the gift certificates for completing the surveys. If you haven't completed it, you still have a few moments. So please do so. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you for braving the rain. The Wisdom Institute took care of every detail except two. We didn't put anybody in charge of the weather, and we didn't put a handler in charge of Freeman. Thank you all.